Story 1. Animal farming and slaughter. I am not a vegan, but objectively, raising billions of animals in mostly poor conditions to kill them on an industrial scale is horrifying. Story 2. Using single-use plastics like it's no big deal. Future generations are probably going to look at our plastic forks and straws in landfills, still perfectly intact, and think we were the ultimate villains of a dystopian movie. Wait, you're telling me they used something for 10 minutes that will stick around for 500 years? What was their plan? Oh right, they didn't have one. Story 3. I really hope that one day we'll look back with utter bafflement that the best way to treat cancer was to pump the body full of poison and hope it kills the cancer cells. Story 4. Allowed an artificial scarcity of housing instead of creating our own infrastructure and housing to satisfy the needs of the people when the people are the ones who create and build the sewers, houses, and power lines, not the government and not the wealthy. Story 5. Optimistically, pollution, war, corruption, terrorism. Pessimistically, being able to see a clear sky, feel actual grass, produce children without over-reliance on cloning. Realistically, get along relatively speaking. Story 6. These questions are usually asked with the general understanding that the future is going to be some sort of great society and we'll look back at our failings with either disdain or fascination. Maybe 10 years ago, I would have thought that. I don't think society in over 100 years is going to be so great anymore. I'm not even sure they will have the rights or ability to read or learn about our history. Story 7. So much of the animal cruelty that barely anyone notices. Factory farming, zoos, marine parks, and keeping pets like birds, snakes, gerbils, and betta fish in tiny cages or cups. Also, making people drive to work to sit at a cubicle when it is completely unnecessary. The mental abuse inflicted upon people by their jobs and frequently physical abuse. Having healthcare be so expensive, not only regarding insurance but also the amount hospitals are allowed to charge for everything. Story 8. Looking at tiny little screens with dancing teenagers on them while walking, driving, eating, and even, dare I say it, using the bathroom. The smartphone is the end of the world. Story 9. Presuming that they will have comprehensive real-time personal biometrics and probably an artificial intelligence agent monitoring it, any of our activities that are obviously personally harmful to them, such as smoking, drinking, dietary choices, the materials we use in our products, and the way we treat illnesses will be scrutinized. In a similar way to how we think about people using leeches or bloodletting as a medical procedure 200 years ago. Story 10. I would like to live in a society where every car could be driven autonomously, so that we no longer have to trust that those driving around us are not reckless, emotional, road-raging, drunk drivers. I will trade the luxury of driving for safety any day. Story 11. Most of America's labor infrastructure is reliant on millions of personal vehicles, which everyone must purchase, maintain, and be trained to operate. A shift to some combination of mass transit, remote work, and self-driving vehicles seems inevitable in the future. It wouldn't surprise me if subscription services for self-driving vehicles become popular, where you work remotely and pay a fee much smaller than a car payment to have transportation for the 3 times each week you need it. Story 12. Bot Bob. Dude, can you believe this place used to be covered by people made out of organic materials like flesh and blood? Bot Bill, right? It's a good thing their need for higher quarterly earnings reports drove them to create us. I still can't believe they did that. Bot Bob. And to think it only took a year to rid this rock of those idiots. Both bots. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that was a fun year. Story 13. It will be the things we eat and drink. The chemicals in it all, or maybe there's something we use regularly that we don't know yet are super toxic, like lead paint or asbestos. Maybe the talc thing. Story 14. I hope to God that in 200 years forcing women and children to give birth to their rapist children will be seen as barbaric and archaic. But I do not have high hopes. I think women will be violated, and our biology will be used against us as a weapon for the entire remaining existence of the species. I do not have faith in humans to develop love or sympathy for women. Story 15. You were telling me this guy was a convicted felon, attempted to disenfranchise the voters of 7 different states in order to steal an election, serial fraudster, left classified material laying around at a country club frequented by foreign nationals, adjudicated sex offender, bragged about assaulting women, bragged about going into a dressing room with teenage girls, And he was still elected president even though he was unqualified to get a job as a school bus driver? What was wrong with you people? Story 16, filming everything. It seems like every little thing you see these days, there's a sea of phone screens recording it, no matter how mundane. You're never going to watch that again, and you're missing it live. Story 17. Much like we wonder why there were so many tobacconists 50 years ago, people will wonder why we let kids have such huge quantities of sugar, chocolate, lollies, soft drinks, flavored milks, fake juice, ice cream, biscuits. Everything has sugar in it, and it's so addictive. Story 18. Cell phones used to communicate with each other from these boxes that utilized radio waves, and they would hold them next to their faces as they worked. And they wondered why they got brain cancer. Ever had that phantom buzz in your leg where your phone is normally in your pocket? I think about that every time I sit in the car and instinctively put my phone between my legs. Story 19. In 200 years, the few remaining people will ask themselves why humanity was so stupid and didn't use its intelligence. Against our better judgment, we continue to destroy our Earth. On humanity's tombstone will be written, "Too much was not enough." Story 20. In 200 years, people will look back in disbelief at how we allowed technology to advance without fully understanding its consequences on humanity. They will wonder how we ever thought it was okay to trade our privacy, our time, and even our very sense of self for the illusion of progress. Story 21. Plan for next week's successful invasion of Greenland via potshots at Newfoundland and Labrador to show the new old president is coming for you next. Distant Panama. Story 22. I can see a world 200 years from now where the consumption of animals is going to be taboo. I think that in general, if you have two equally valuable objects, humans will prefer the object that is more ethical. With lab-grown meat, I can see a world where it is both indistinguishable from the real thing and commercially viable in about 100 years. Once those two are out of the way, it is going to be the preferred option for 99.9% of the public. Then, for another 100 years, where it is the social norm, eating the real thing will be completely foreign. I think we are starting to see that transition now with sport hunting. Big game hunting is already completely taboo. And in my opinion, the reason is simply that the ethical alternative is so similar that there is not much of a reason for it. If you like shooting guns and hitting moving targets, the natural choice in modern society is shooting clay pigeons or going to a shooting range. It is getting phased out, not for strictly moral or ethical reasons fundamentally, just that the alternative is roughly just as valuable. To the point where we are at now, when we see a big game hunter, the modern reaction is mostly confusion and asking them, why? Which indirectly changes our moral landscape. I just think we are moving in the same direction with eating meat. Not a vegan or animal rights activist, by the way. Story 23. Expensive basic groceries shouldn't be a thing. Having a few companies control all the grocery supply into a country and set their own high prices goes unchecked. Remember when Loblaws, I think it was behaving unethically and ensured that the dollar store next to them wasn't allowed to sell bread cheaper than they did? Now the dollar store doesn't sell bread at all. Story 24. Some of you guys are very optimistic about the future, and as someone who has increasingly become pessimistic over the last 10 years, I envy that. Most likely, anyone in 200 years will look back on good things that have become impossible. Like, they just sprayed themselves with drinking water every day for 15 to 30 minutes? Or people were able to just walk around outside without protection and breathe the air? Story 25. Laughing out loud, you think the human race will be able to post things online in 200 years? The world is burning due to climate change. You will be struggling for food before the end of your lifetime. Story 26. People might be shocked by our current reliance on social media for communication and validation since we allow technology to dictate social interactions and self-worth. Story 27. Net zero. Controversial, I know, because what is currently sold to us is business as usual, growth but green. I believe there is every chance that it may permanently condemn us to moving from a high-energy society to a low-energy society and impoverish us all. Perhaps a South Africa-style society that divides into racial or ethnic groups, large-scale blackouts, and infrastructure that continues to degrade as we cannot afford to maintain it. Widespread hunger, population decline, the whole shooting match. A total nightmare scenario. Edit. I am speaking about the United Kingdom here. Your mileage may vary wherever you are. Story 28. The orphanage level from the game Thief. Deadly Shadows is a burned-down orphanage, and there are these black children's handprints on the windows, giggles echoing in the hallways, and it's just plain creepy. I had to close the game several times because I was feeling very uneasy and couldn't finish the level. I don't remember many details from the actual level, only how scary it was to me. Story 29. Western countries which generally value democracy, religious tolerance, respect for the rule of law, women's rights, and rights for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgender, and queer individuals are allowing significant immigration of people from cultures that do not support those values. These cultures have historically not integrated well, have significantly more children, and, on average, require greater resources than they contribute. Story 30. Factory farming. While I'm not fully vegan, I recognize that we no longer need to consume so much meat, particularly beef, at a scale that renders actual harm to our planet on a massive scale, to say nothing of the morality of raising billions of sentient creatures for slaughter. Our descendants won't just say, "I can't believe they did that." They will weep in horror at our few surviving films that have been smuggled out of processing facilities, even more than we weep about them now. Story 31. Using transitioning as a treatment for gender dysphoria. I can guarantee people in the future will be wondering how such an advanced society still had such barbaric practices. Story 32. Get stoned every day. Marijuana, tobacco, and possibly alcohol will be looked down upon. But unfortunately, another toxic addiction will have taken its place. Story 33. So you got smoking rates down among young people after decades of policy and education. Then you allowed tobacco vapes flavored like sweets in brightly colored disposable plastic to be sold everywhere. Story 34. I pray that after this delusional Make America Great Again era, there's enough of America that they can rebuild after the inevitable plethora of deplorable decisions he is about to impose on the entire country. Hopefully, after 200 years of healing, America won't be a dystopian nightmare. Story 35. The invention of the airplane, which allows transportation across the country within hours instead of days. Cars, the internet, cell phones, microwave ovens, electric refrigerators, air conditioning, and home computers. There are tons of things we take for granted today that did not exist 200 years ago. The United States will only be 249 years old this July 4th. Story 36. Worked over 40 hours a week. They are going to look at times where people worked their shift, went to bed, woke up, went to their shift, had the person who just finished lie in their bed, and so on. Basically, non-stop, unhealthy working without any noteworthy employee rights. Well, I guess unless the big corporations have enslaved humanity at that point, then it is going to be, I cannot believe they were free and had something called nations and governments and they were allowed to do what they want for most of the day. Story 37. Something tells me humans are going to figure out social engineering on a global scale and wonder how we didn't figure it out 200 years ago. Whether that's eliminating global social networks, or unifying as one all-encompassing collective of consumers, or anywhere and everywhere in between. Story 38. Voting for fascists. Twice in a century. Edit. Not sure why I'm being downvoted. For the people habitually misunderstanding, I am German and we have an election pretty soon. Story 39. Step 1. Poop in the toilet. Step 2. Use a thin piece of paper to clean your butthole so that most of it ends up on the paper. Step 3. Stop when the paper isn't brown. Step 4. No further steps. It's that last bit that makes you all poopy but savages. Nasty stinkies. Story 40. For the record, I don't think there will be humans alive in 200 years. However, if there were to be, and if they would preserve historical records to have a fairly accurate recollection of what the world today is like, these would probably be on their minds the most. 1. Why did humans not address ecological catastrophes, mainly the climate crisis, even though they had all the information to know what it would cause, when it would cause it, and how to prevent it? Why did humans choose to keep billions of animals in hideous conditions just to slaughter them because they enjoyed the taste of their meat, even though this caused multiple ecological problems and was highly calorically inefficient, all the while they had the technology and know how to feed themselves with plant products only? Why did humans uphold systems of power that benefited the few instead of opting for more democratic systems that would benefit the masses, both on the national level and the global level? Some of us ponder these questions even now and are dumbfounded by them. Story 41. Probably how we still treat climate change like it's a debate instead of an emergency. Future generations will look back and be like, wait, you guys had the science, the technology, and the warning signs, and you still didn't fix it?